Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about an extraordinary development in the Middle East. In the first 2 weeks of taking over the presidency, Donald Trump has come out and said that he wants to retake control of the Panama Canal, which was actually signed over to Panama by Jimmy Carter back in 1977 and formally transferred in 1999. And he also said that the USA should take over Greenland, which is notionally part of Denmark. However, in the most extraordinary development, he has now said that the USA wants to take over the Gaza Strip. So let's hear exactly what Donald Trump had to say on this matter.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks.
So I don't think anybody would disagree with Donald Trump that a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. But I think his proposal for the USA to take over the Gaza Strip is potentially one of the most controversial things that he said, certainly in the last 2 weeks, or potentially ever. And that's saying something. The idea here is that all of the people would be moved out, and there's more than 2 million people who call the Gaza Strip their home. The area would then be completely cleared. They'd take away all of the rubble from the buildings. And in a UN assessment recently, they estimated that there's more than 42 million tons of rubble, and it would cost over $1.2 billion to remove all of that rubble. And that doesn't include all of the things like asbestos. There's obviously a lot of asbestos in that area, so it'd be quite a big job to remove all of that safely. And it's also estimated that there might be up to 10,000 bodies that are still trapped in the area because there's been fierce fighting going on between Israel and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip over the last 15 months. And so it would be a massive job to clear this area. But in terms of removing all of the people, obviously that is a hugely controversial issue because this is what they see as their homeland. For a lot of Palestinians, they would refuse to leave this area. So in terms of getting a better feel as to what's actually going on, why the Gaza Strip exists, because I think a lot of people hear about the Gaza Strip and Israel and Palestine and the war without really fully understanding the history of the area. So let's have a quick look at how the Gaza Strip and Palestine and Israel all came about.
At the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was dissolved, and the victorious European countries divided many of its component regions into newly created states under the League of Nations mandates, and the area of Palestine was allocated to Great Britain. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, which declared British support for the creation in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This declaration was enthusiastically received by many Jewish people worldwide, but was opposed by Palestinian and Arab leaders who claimed that the objective was a breach of the promises made to the Sharif of Mecca in 1915 in exchange for Arab fighting against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. Over the course of the following 30 years, the British government put forward a number of different proposals. However, it became very difficult to reach an agreement between the two different sides. In 1947, the United Nations created the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine to find an immediate solution to the Palestinian question. And in November 1947, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution recommending the adoption and implementation of a partition plan which allocated defined territories to both the Arab state and the Jewish state, under the principle of Palestine becoming a single binational state. Soon after this resolution was agreed, large-scale fighting broke out between the Arab and Jewish communities in Palestine. After 5.5 months of intense fighting, on the 14th of May 1948, the Jewish People's Council gathered in Tel Aviv and declared the establishment of the State of Israel. And the following day, the US President Harry Truman confirmed the USA's recognition of the country. In response to this declaration, the Arab countries of Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and Iraq sent invading forces into Palestine and took control of the area known as the Gaza Strip. This war lasted for 10 months, and as a result of the war, the State of Israel controlled the area that the UN had proposed for the Jewish state, as well as almost 60% of the area proposed for the Arab state. However, the Palestinians refused to recognise the State of Israel, and Israelis and Palestinians have remained in conflict for the last 75 years.
So as you've just seen, the Gaza Strip came about after periods of intense fighting, and there remains a lot of conflict in terms of who should own that land. The Palestinians have never recognised Israel as a country in its own right. Now, in terms of the proposal put forward by Donald Trump, I think it's commendable that he's trying to put some form of peace settlement together. He's trying to come up with something that will work over the long term. But relocating all of those people out of what they see as their homeland, I think, is a very controversial proposal. And in terms of the reaction from the local communities, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, has come out and condemned it, as have Hamas. And Saudi Arabia have been the first Arab nation that's come out and said that they don't see this as a workable proposal. They see this as forced movement of the people of Palestine, and so they're not supportive of this idea. And I think having the support of Saudi Arabia would have been a really important step in terms of Donald Trump putting together something that might have been workable. But the fact that they've come out and said that they're totally against it, I think throws a huge question mark over whether or not this could actually be something that would work in the Middle East. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because Donald Trump has said a lot of controversial things over the last 2 weeks. In fact, he's said a lot of controversial things, period, but you know what I mean. But his proposal for the USA to take over the Gaza Strip is probably the single most controversial thing that he's ever said, because the Palestine-Israeli conflict that's been going on for such a long period of time, it's been going on before 1948, when Israel declared itself as an independent country. It's been going on historically for hundreds of years. And so it's very difficult to be able to resolve an issue like that. When you've got two different groups who both claim the same area of land, it's going to be very difficult to get a peaceful resolution. That's something that people have been trying to get in place for a long period of time. And Donald Trump has come up with this new controversial plan whereby the USA will take over the Gaza Strip. So theoretically, that could provide some independent ownership. Rather than Israel or Palestine saying that they own it, then the USA would say, well, we own it now. But the problem with that is that the people who live in the Gaza Strip are very unlikely to want to do that. They don't want to be part of the USA. And secondly, you're talking about removing all of those people and then displacing them to surrounding countries such as Egypt and Jordan. And those countries haven't said, yes, we will take everybody. And you've also got the people who live there saying, well, actually, we don't want to go. Now, theoretically, removing all of the rubble and the bombs and all of the asbestos and everything else is a good idea, because it's going to be very difficult for the people who live in the Gaza Strip to actually rebuild all of their homes. Even if a long-term peace settlement is agreed, it's going to be firstly very costly, and then secondly really difficult to actually take away all of that rubble and then rebuild homes. So the theoretical concept of the USA providing funding to rebuild the whole area works in theory. However, the practice is very different, because you're never really going to get away from the problem that people believe that that's their homeland, that's where they want to live. They don't want to be moved to another country and then the area to be rebuilt. And whether or not they would be able to move back remains questionable. I don't know what the plan is. Donald Trump hasn't actually fleshed out his full proposal. He's just said that the USA is going to take over the Gaza Strip. So I think the overall summary of today's video is that whilst Donald Trump's proposal would have some merit in terms of the big picture of actually providing some way of rebuilding that whole area, it's a 25-mile by 6-mile area along the coastline. It's an idea that potentially could work from a business proposal. But in terms of the politics and all of the geopolitics of looking at, do people want to move? Do they want to go and relocate to Jordan or Egypt and let Donald Trump rebuild the whole country? I think the answer to that is a firm no. And in order for this idea to work, all of the surrounding countries would need to sign up, and it looks very unlikely that any of the surrounding countries are going to be supportive of Donald Trump's idea. So whilst in theory this could provide some sort of long-term solution to the problem of the Gaza Strip, I think the reality is that it's very, very, very unlikely to happen. But hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.